Hello everyone, so the anniversary patch is going to go live next week, and there are some changes that are going to go live for Warriors soon that will probably change some things, and people will definitely be testing a lot of things now when the changes go through. We have actually talked about most of these changes in previous videos, but we do have a little bit more context now, and we have come up with some possible builds that we might want to try and play when that patch goes live. Now, the first change that's happening is that we'll be able to play Drakthir Warrior, but I don't think that many people will be changing to this. Wing Buffet is going to be 3-minute cooldown instead of 1.5. That's the AoE stop. Tail Swap is just going to be for Evokers, not for Drakthir. You will get a little bit more mobility, but it's going to be a little bit reduced anyway. So I don't think Warriors need any more mobility, really, anyway. So I don't think this is a good race for Warriors. Anyway, so the actual changes for Warriors. So we talked about this one before, of course. Thunderous Roar and Odin's Fury, they are being nerfed. And I am still disappointed that we are getting nerfed in AoE because we are falling behind other classes in M+, for sure. And our damage definitely does feel lackluster overall in keys as well. So yeah, disappointing. I don't think it's needed, especially when other classes are doing much better than us in consistent AoE and they catch up really fast actually to our burst AoE too. So yeah, and also many classes are even getting buffed, those that are already ahead of us. So it just feels like, well, it's very unnecessary. But hey, it is what it is. Next up is Overwhelmed, is being nerfed from 12 stacks to 10. That's the Slayer debuff here, the one that makes it so that enemies take 1% more damage from you for each stack, max 12 stacks. So that's going to be a 10% damage increase now instead of 12 when that max stacks. So Arms' Warbreaker radius has been increased to 10 yards. That's cool, I guess, but not really that many builds use Warbreaker at the moment, except for, I guess, high AoE Colossus builds. And Warbringer, they still put Warbringer here. Now deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. Warbringer, by the way, is a PvP talent. That's very likely not the ability they're talking about here. They're talking about Warbreaker, but they just haven't fixed this. If it was Warbringer, it would be down here in the PvP section, and it isn't. But yes, Warbringer now deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. That does not matter for Arms, because the only reason you use Warbreaker is to reduce the damage... No, sorry, to increase the damage that targets take from you. The initial damage of Warbreaker does not matter whatsoever. So, yeah. For some reason, Arms is getting nerfed for whatever reason. Arms does not need a nerf. Like I said in my previous videos, I'm not a fan of Arms right now, but I also am aware that Arms just doesn't need a nerf. Not at all. Arms needs help. Anyway. Big change for Fury here is that Raging Blow and Bloodthirst damage, the base damage of both abilities, has been increased by 25% and 30% respectively. This does not buff Reckless Abandon's Crushing Blow and Bloodbath. So that means that Anger Management is going to catch up with Reckless Abandon. I'll show you the numbers in a moment. Crushing Force has been buffed, so that's this talent here. The crit chance increase has been increased from 2 to 4. From 2/4 to 5/10. So that's a decent amount of crit on Bloodthirst. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So what do these changes actually mean? That means that these changes are going through. So Slayer is still about 6% ahead of Thane in full single target builds. So that's comparing Slayer single target build, full single target, and Thane full single target builds. That's about the same as it is now. I think last time we simmed that, it was 7% ahead. So I guess that closed a little bit. Reckless Abandon is 0.7% ahead of Anger Management for Slayer, which means that basically if you want to play Anger Management in whatever content that you're doing, you can do that. You're not going to really notice a difference, and it's the same for Thane as well. Raid AoE Slayer and Thane builds are pretty much equal on single target. So that means in AoE builds for Slayer and for Thane, they will have the same amount of single target damage. Slayer still does more burst AoE, which is much more valuable for raids. You know, things like Brood Twister has parasites with low health. If you just burst with Slayer with Bladestorm and all that, those will die by the time your Bladestorm is gone. Same with Rashanon ads, same with a lot of things on Ansurek as well. So this is pretty much why Fury was performing so well in the raid, because Slayer is that bursty. So next up here is Mythic plus Thane. Reckless Abandon and Anger Management builds are pretty much equal in sustained AoE. The only problem is that AM does desync sometimes, which is kind of annoying. It does feel nice to have CDR sometimes, but when your CDR causes your cooldowns to not sync up, it doesn't feel as good. But it is nice to have cooldowns more often so that you can always cover, you know, always have damage for packs. Anger Management, though, is considerably behind Reckless Abandon for Slayer, so it's only really Thane that will enjoy Anger Management if you do want to do it. But yeah, at the very least, our builds have sort of normalized, and it's not just one dominant build now. You can kind of play whatever you like. So would I say they're overall good changes? Yeah, I guess so. Overall good changes, but nothing really changes because our numbers at the end of the day will still be the same, right? Except maybe slightly worse because of the soft cap nerfs to Thunderous Roar and Odin's Fury. And of course, Arms getting stray nerfs, but yeah, that seems to be a recurring theme in these patch notes recently. So what builds might we end up playing then? So if I was to change my Reckless Abandon Thane builds, let me cook something up. Hold up. Right, okay, so I found some builds that have sims to back up their numbers. So thank you, Crispy, from the Warrior Discord for cooking up these builds. So this is what he found sims very well on AoE and single target for Thane. So this is something I will definitely try next week. This is an Anger Management build. It has Spear, and it also has Berserker's Torment. No Odin's Fury, interestingly enough, and finally actually using the Recklessness notes down here. Both of them, actually. It does use Ravager because Bladestorm just isn't that good for Thane. This 1 point in Cruel Strikes doesn't actually add that much damage, so if you do feel like you need the tankiness, you can actually take that point into Endurance training because you have picked Spear, which means you can actually drop this point here. Because when you, as you probably know, when you take Roar, dropping a point in Armor to your Teeth is a serious DPS loss, but dropping 1 point in Cruel Strikes, on the other hand, isn't that big of a deal, so you could do this. But yeah, this build doesn't rely very much on bleeds. It's the Bloodthirsts are going to hit pretty damn hard with 2 points in Vicious Contempt. Thunder Blasts and Claps are of course going to hit really hard as well. And you're going to have low cooldown on your Recklessness. So that's nice, though you might get some cooldown desync with your Recklessness and Ravager with your Spear. Don't know how that's going to play exactly in practice, but I would imagine that you should be able to fit in 2 Recklessness and Ravagers. Sorry, for every other Recklessness and Ravager, you should be able to get a Spear. But maybe you get too much CDR, and then you maybe have to hold a little bit in order to line up with Spear, and then you have to decide, is that worth holding for, or should you just send on cooldown? But that's just normal for anger management, really, isn't it? So yeah. Anyway, moving on. So Reckless Abandon Thane looks like this. So this also is a little bit interesting. We're actually seeing Depths of Insanity being picked up. Again, this is with Spear. Otherwise, the build looks quite similar. This one actually does have Powerful Enrage, whereas the Anger Management has the Frenzied Enrage. And that makes sense because the more haste you have, the more CDR you get. More CDR is more good with Anger Management for the most part anyway. So this is also something I'll try. He's also cooked up a Slayer AM build, which looks very familiar with most of you, I'm sure, if you played Slayer this season. I wouldn't take Fast Footwork though, I would take Rumbling Earth for M+. I would take the Brutal Finish here. And also, very interesting is that Fierce Follow-Through, even on live servers right now, before the changes, it's seeming better than Opportunist, because Opportunist got nerfed last week. It turns out that Fierce Follow-Through now seems a little bit higher than Opportunist. And Fierce Follow-Through actually works in AoE as well. So if you, for example, hitting 5 targets, and any of your 5 Bloodthirsts crit a target, then your next Bloodthirst will benefit from this. So that's actually really good. But problem is that Bloodthirst itself doesn't really deal that much damage, I guess. But it's still nice. It feels good that it works in a positive way in AoE rather than negative, because our old Blood Craze pre-rework didn't work that way. Yeah, so this one again is with Frenzied and Rage because it's anger management. It does have Odin's Fury, it does have Roar. So this looks nice to play. The only annoying thing with Slayer and anger management is that your Recklessness and Bladestorm are going to desync all the time. And well, it is obviously worth just sending your Bladestorm and your Recklessness on cooldown. That's what you're gonna want to do, but it's gonna feel a little bit awkward because Bladestorm gets its own CDR from Imminent Demise, right? On top of anger management. And next up is Reckless Abandon Slayer, which actually nothing changes from our normal build that we're playing right now. So yeah, that's it. The numbers are here, like I said. These are the builds that they're referencing in this post. So yeah, definitely gonna give these a try. Very interested in trying the anger management ones because they are, you know, different than the things that we've been playing recently. Even if the numbers end up about the same, I still want to see how they all play out in practice. So this is probably a perfect time for me to talk about Thane versus Slayer in M+, which I have hinted at a few times in my previous 2 videos. So I have played a lot of Thane and Slayer in keys, and I just kept alternating between the 2 to try and figure out which one is better, where is the other one better than the other. Are there situations where I want to play Slayer or Thane? And the conclusion really is the difference isn't as big as I thought it would be, although Thane does have significantly more sustained AoE, and I can definitely see higher overalls in my keys as Thane, but the single target is slightly lower. It is noticeably lower, actually. But yes, I can, you know, I can bring my warrior to a key and feel like I'm not too far behind and I'm not being, you know, carried or whatever. So that's great. Now with Slayer, I do have a clip here too of Slayer, and I am a little bit behind here. Maybe if I was playing Arakara, I wouldn't be this far behind. But in this key in particular, I didn't do that much damage on Slayer, but there was a good reason that I did play Slayer in this key. It was just to do better single target to the bosses. The problem boss in this dungeon is the 3rd boss for us. So let me skip forward to the 3rd boss. And Slayer is doing pretty stupid damage here. I went in with all cooldowns and Lust, and I think it looks like I forgot to potion. But anyway, yeah, I brought Slayer to this boss because I wanted to kill this boss. As soon as we can kill this boss, we would time the key. And I'll probably do the same on a plus 14 key as well. Another thing with Slayer also is that Slayer is really good at dealing AoE burst. So when we went to a Necrotic Wake, when we pushed one of those up, the boss Amarth, the 2nd boss, the one that summons adds, Slayer has really, really good cooldowns for that, because for every single add wave, you should have an Odin's Fury and a Bladestorm at the very least, if you don't have full cooldowns anyway. So either you have full cooldowns or you have a Odin's Fury and Bladestorm. So that's a lot of damage, and it really helps make that boss a lot easier if you can kill those adds really fast. Thane doesn't have that same amount of burst that Slayer does for those kind of situations. So when cooldowns line up nicely for Slayer, when quick burst is important, that's when Slayer is better. And then there's also the aspect of playstyle and, you know, what's more fun to play. And for me, I think Slayer is more fun than Thane, although I don't think Thane is bad either. I think both are enjoyable to play. I just have a little bit more fun when I play Slayer. But yeah, with these changes though that are coming up, it does mean that Slayer will lose a little bit of power relative to Thane. So that means maybe this assessment won't be as relevant this coming reset, because Slayer does lose that 2% of Overwhelmed, whereas Thane loses nothing. Although, interestingly, the Thane buffs that we received last week are not on the PTR right now, and presumably Blizzard will be applying those changes to the PTR before that patch actually goes live. If not, then we'll have the patch go live without the Thane buffs that we received last week, and Thane will be in the dumpster again. So, yeah, hopefully that's not something that they're gonna forget. Surely they wouldn't forget that, right? Right. Anyway, that's what I think about Thane versus Slayer. I do feel like you can kind of just play whatever you feel like, especially in lower keys where your Slayer burst is more relevant than Thane burst. Thane sustain AoE. Slayer might even be better. Or in a pug where you're not sure how your tank is going to pull, so you end up like holding cooldowns for too long, or whatever, then maybe Thane is better because you're dealing more damage outside of your cooldowns. So there's no simple answer to this, but the difference isn't that big. Whatever you play, you're probably going to be fine. It's not going to be much of a difference either way. But yes, Thane definitely has the higher AoE potential, sustained AoE, overall damage potential. So yeah, there you have it. Right, so for the actual numbers then, post-patch, post-changes, assuming everything goes through, Thane will do 4.2 million DPS on 5 targets, 5 minutes, with the anger management build that I showed earlier with Spear and Berserker's Torment. Now, Slayer, on the other hand, is quite far behind that, but it does do more burst, like I talked about, and the single target post-patch will also be exactly the same pretty much between the two. So I think Thane will probably, at least on paper, should be superior to Slayer, but there could be some situations where Slayer's burst comes in clutch and is required for the key. So we'll just have to wait and see, but my bets are definitely on Thane at the moment, especially because it's tankier. It deals more priority damage, so it deals more single target to the target that you're attacking compared to Slayer in AoE as well. So yeah, in fact, when there are multiple targets, Thane actually deals more single target to its primary target. So like, how do I explain this? Okay, so I just pulled up the single target DPS on the AoE builds that we were looking at. So Thane is dealing 1.367 million DPS on single, whereas Slayer is dealing 1.359 million DPS, right? But if Thane is fighting 5 targets, is dealing this DPS, right? When it's fighting this many targets, the main target is taking this much damage on average, 1.5 million. That's higher than what you would do on pure single target. That's because Thane actually has some sort of funnel through seismic reverb. And there might be other things as well that contribute to this. But yeah, thunderclaps obviously are much more effective than whirlwinds. Whenever you whirlwind, you're losing single target damage in order to cleave. So the single target damage that Slayer does is 1.359, right? So if I look at that here, the single target damage, the main target damage is lower than the single target sim, whereas it's the opposite for Thane. So there's some hidden power in Thane there, I suppose. So that's good to know. So TLDR then, Thunderous Roar and Odin's Fury has been nerfed on mass AoE. That will affect Arms, Fury and Prot when it comes to Thunderous Roar. Another stray nerf for Arms, and Hero Talent Slayer has been nerfed as well for Arms and Fury. Another stray nerf for Arms, but that means that Colossus will catch up a little bit to Slayer, but not because Colossus got buffed, that's because Slayer got nerfed. So, well, it is what it is. It probably won't change much. It just means that Slayer will be still played on single target, although a little bit weaker. And Colossus is still ahead on AoE for arms. Warbreaker's radius has been increased by 2 yards, and Warbreaker's damage is being reduced beyond 5 targets. So that's just the initial damage, which just doesn't matter at all. And Fury's anger management builds have been buffed so that you can play them now without being significantly weaker than Reckless Abandon. Basically, if you play Reckless Abandon or anger management, the difference is pretty much 0, as shown in this post here. And I suppose on bosses like Ovinox, where you might have considered to play anger management, you'll perform significantly better, because anger management was really good for that fight because of the cooldown timings that you can achieve with that build. A slight buff to Bloodthirst doesn't really amount to much. It's just to sort of compensate for this nerf. Of course, they didn't compensate for arms. But yeah, that's it. A few builds to try next week. I am excited to try them. I am still sad that we are just getting side grades or nerfs, because we are definitely not even close to being too strong right now. So yeah. All right, so that's going to be the end of this video. So I talked about a lot of things, covered a lot of things, and I'm sorry that the video is kind of all over the place. There's a few cuts here and there because I had to do multiple takes, and I had to spend a little bit more time on this video than usual. But hopefully it's still watchable and you liked it. And if you did, please press the like button. Do let me know what you think in the comments about the upcoming patch. And if you have any feedback on how I presented this information to you, please let me know. And also, big thank you again to the Skyhold people, Archie, Crispy especially, and all of the other theory crafters in there. Very little of this work was done by me, myself, but here I am presenting it to you anyway. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.